Week 12 of the fantasy football season. Here's the top 15 tight ends. I'm ranking this week. Number 1, Travis Kelce of the Kansas City Chiefs. So last week, I know he didn't do anything at the Buffalo Bills, but Kelce this week, great matchup at the Carolina Panthers. They can't stop anyone, and I think this Chief offense is going to take off in this game, where Patrick Mahomes, usually after a bad game, he goes out there and puts up a big performance. So Kansas City 9-1 on the season, but to be honest, their offense hasn't been great all season long. But this week at Carolina, with everyone back in the lineup that could return this week, obviously Rashee Rice and Hollywood Brown aren't coming back this year. They're out for the year. But Pacheco returning helps this offense even more, and I think it opens up the passing game just a bit as well. So I think Kelce goes out there and has a big performance. Number 2, George Kittle of the San Francisco 49ers. So Kittle, I'm going to pencil him in playing in this game. Last week he was close to playing, Kyle Shanahan said. And this week it's a big matchup at the Packers, where wild card spot is on the line. So this is a big NFC matchup. George Kittle, in my opinion, one of the more talented and best tight ends in all pro football. And we've seen it this season. When he's on the field, this offense is way better. In the couple games he's missed, this offense hasn't put up points. So this week at the Green Bay Packers, I believe he's going to play. And George Kittle's been a top 3-4 option every week, the whole season at the position. Number 3, Brock Bowers of the Vegas Raiders, easily the number 1 target in the passing game. And I believe he's been the best tight end this season in fantasy football. So Brock Bowers, it's a tough matchup. That's why he's ranked number 3 versus the Denver Broncos. This Bronco defense, they zero in. Team's the best player, and for the most part, we haven't seen players and wide receivers have big games versus Bronco teams. So this week, it's going to be tough for Gardner Minshew in this offense. He's going to be under pressure constantly. He's going to turn the football over at times as well, I believe. But Brock Bowers, he's still an athlete. He's unguardable, in my opinion, at the tight end position. We saw last week 13 for 126 and a touchdown versus Miami. But this week versus Denver, I just think the numbers will drop off just a bit. But every week, he's a top 3 option right now. Worst case, number 4, Trey McBride of the Arizona Cardinals. So Trey McBride, he's the number 1 option in the passing game for the Cardinals, in my opinion. He can run all the routes. His yard after catch ability is great. And he's another tight end like Brock Bowers, safeties, linebackers. It doesn't matter who you put on him, because he's going to make plays and he's going to burn those guys for the most part and get wide open. So this week at Seattle, division matchup, Seattle secondary, their pass defense hasn't been good all season long. And I believe Trey McBride once again goes out there and has a nice ball game. Number 5, TJ Hawkinson of the Minnesota Vikings. So I know last week it was a bad game, no doubt about it, for Hawkinson, where he only had 3.20 fantasy points in PPR leagues. But this week at the Chicago Bears, a team he's got a great track record, and obviously he knows very well, playing his whole career in the NFC North, all the seasons with the Lions and now the last 2 years with the Minnesota Vikings. I think TJ Hawkinson, he bounces back, he has a good game. And we know this bad defense, they're going to try to double team Justin Jefferson, and we've seen teams do that over the last few weeks, where either Hawkinson, he's had the big game with Jordan Addison last week with that one-on-one coverage. So this week at Chicago, I think he bounces back with a good game. Number 6, Cade Otton of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So Cade Otton, it's been a great year for him. I know Mike Evans returning in this game, but still he's going to be the number 2 option instead of the number 1 option in the passing game. And he's going to get a lot of single coverage. He's a big target, 6'7", 6'8". Good yard after catch guy, and he makes a lot of great catches in traffic as well. So him and Baker Mayfield over the last month of the season, with the injuries to Godwin and Evans, definitely built up on their rapport. And Cade Otton now, he's a household tight end, I believe, in fantasy football. And this week at the New York Giants, he should have a great game, in my opinion. Number 7, David Njoku of the Cleveland Browns. So David Njoku, his numbers have definitely gone up over the last month of the season since Jameis Winston's been in there at starting quarterback. And we know Winston, he's got the gunslinger mentality. He's going to throw it all over the yard. He's going to spread the field. And we've seen it in the whole receiving room with Judy, Elijah Moore, and Tillman. And we've seen it when the Njoku as well, with the numbers going up. So this week in a matchup versus a great defense, no doubt about it, in the Pittsburgh Steelers, I still think that Njoku goes out there, has a great performance. Number 8, Sam Laporta of the Detroit Lions. So Laporta, he was starting to kick things into gear, and his numbers starting to go up for this Lion team. But obviously he missed last week's game where Detroit won 52-6 versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. But this week I believe he returns in this one in Indianapolis, a fast track and a defense that really can't stop anyone, as well as this Indianapolis defense. I think Sam Laporta, he'll be back in this ball game. He's a big target, and he was the number 1 tight end off the board. He's definitely been a bust where he's gotten taken in fantasy leagues, but I still believe he's a top 10 option weekly. Number 9, Jonnu Smith of the Miami Dolphins. As Jonnu Smith, the last few weeks, he's definitely moving up the rankings at the tight end position. And last week, a monster game, 101 yards, 2 touchdowns. Right now, in my opinion, he's the number 2 option in the passing game with Jalen Waddle. He's been pretty much non-existent all season long. So Jonnu Smith, we know he's a good yard after catch tight end, and we've seen it anywhere he's been in his career. He goes out there and he can put up numbers as the number 1 tight end easily over here in Miami. And him and Tua really starting to build a rapport this week versus one of his former teams, the New England Patriots. I think he could go out there and have a solid game. I'm not saying he's going to find the end zone or anything, but let's say 6 catches, 50-yard type of ball game is definitely possible this week. Number 10, Dallas Goedert of the Philadelphia Eagles. So Goddard, he's returned over the last 2 weeks and double-digit fantasy points in PPR leagues both weeks. So Dallas Goedert, he's a big target, good yard after catch tight end. And him and Jalen Hurts, they've been locked in for years right now in this offense with Philadelphia. So where defenses are rolling coverage, A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith away, he's working the seam and he's working the sidelines as well as Dallas Goedert. And like I said, it doesn't take many targets for him to go out there and have a day. So this week in a potential high-scoring game at the Rams, I like Goddard as a top 10 option. Number 11, Mark Andrews of the Baltimore Ravens. Mark Andrews, it's been an up and down season for him, and last week likely returned to the lineup, and he outplayed Andrews in terms of putting up fantasy points. But this week at the Chargers, potential high-scoring game in the Hardball Bowl, I think Mark Andrews, he's going to go out there and make plays. In my opinion, still the number 2 target in the passing game behind Zay Flowers. Deontay Johnson, they made a deal for him a few weeks ago. He's been non-existent in this offense. Rashad Bateman, he's pretty much a deep ball threat and nothing, an inconsistent wide receiver. So this week, I think Andrews bounces back after he didn't do much in last week's ball game, and he's a viable top 12 option. 12, Zach Ertz of the Washington Commanders. So this week, a great matchup with the Dallas Cowboys coming to town here for Zach Ertz. And this Cowboy defense can't stop anyone. Last week, the defense gave up a lot of points to the Houston Texans, and I think Zach Ertz once again could go out there have a good ball game. Last week, I know he got a lot of garbage time, and he finished with 18 fantasy points in PPR leagues. So this week in a matchup versus an opponent he's very familiar with playing all those seasons in Philadelphia, Zach Ertz. I think he goes out there once again, has a good game. Number 13, Hunter Henry of the New England Patriots. So Hunter Henry, he's definitely been a double-digit tight end the last month of the season for this Patriot team. But the thing is, his ceiling just isn't that high, 10, 12 fantasy points. At most, he's going to get fantasy owners. So this week, a decent matchup at the Miami Dolphins, where their defense isn't all that great. And we saw Brock Bowers go out there last week and put on a clinic, 13 for 126 and a touchdown versus defense. I think Hunter Henry could go out there, and he could be an okay back-end option this week. 14, Tucker Kraft, Green Bay Packers. I know last week he had the goose egg as Tucker Kraft, but I still believe he's that number 2, 3 option in the offense for this Green Bay Packer team. He's a good route runner, good yard after catch tight end. And this week, I think we're going to have to rely on him a little bit in this ball game if they want to pull it out and get the victory. So Tucker Kraft, after coming off a bad ball game, it's just one bad game. We've seen it even from the best players. They get 1 or 2 fantasy points or get shut out and then bounce back the next week. So right now, I wouldn't panic with Kraft. And the 15th and final tight end I'm ranking this week is Will Dissly of the Los Angeles Chargers. So this week, he's definitely had a breakout season in his first year with the Los Angeles Chargers, and him and Justin Herbert definitely on the same page. This week, a potential high-scoring game with the Baltimore Ravens coming to town. And Will Dissly, he was more of a blocker and a second or third string tight end with the Seattle Seahawks, but this season, like I said, breaking out with this Charger team. And when you got a quarterback like Justin Herbert, and you at least could get a few targets per game, you're going to put up some points on some weeks. So this tight end position, the last few weeks, it's definitely gotten better, and there's more options. So Will Dissly as a back-end borderline option. I know some weeks he hasn't put up the numbers, but this week I think he could put up a decent number in the top 15. So that's the top 15 tight ends I'm ranking for week 12 of the fantasy football season.